Hi folks, I'm Dr. Paris Monroe. Welcome to another segment of Open Sessions with Dr. Monroe. Today I want to talk about PTSD some more, and the questions I want to address today are: why are we here? What are we here for? What is our purpose? What happens when we die? Those are the questions I want to cover today, so I hope you will stay tuned. Thank you very much. Again, today I'd like to continue the dialogue regarding PTSD. PTSD is very common out there. We have many military veterans in this area, in the St. Louis region, and many of them have been to combat. Many of them do have PTSD, have had it for a long time, and would like to get rid of it, and would like to know how to do that. Their life is in poor shape. Possibly they're married. Many of them are. Many of them have been married several times, 3, 4, even 5 times. They want to be married, they want to have a wife, they want to have a family, but they are finding that their PTSD is making that pretty doggone impossible. Possibly they're married right now and things are not going so well at home. The PTSD veteran, is not being the fun person that the missus wishes that he was. I think he would like to be that way, but he certainly cannot be that way. And so he has this PTSD trauma problem that he has not been able to get over, has not been able to resolve for a very long time. Many of these veterans that I see over here at this office are even Vietnam veterans. That war has been over almost 50 years now. Many of the veterans that come in were in combat in Vietnam 50 years ago. They did get PTSD from that experience, and they still have it today, and they still have not gotten over it. They may have been to the Veterans Administration, the VA, many times, have tried many medications from the VA, and still have not gotten over their PTSD. They have drank a lot of alcohol over the years, much alcohol over the years, probably several DUIs, other violations too that they probably paid dearly for. That did not get over that did not resolve their PTSD. Marijuana, many of them smoked a bunch of marijuana back in the day, still are smoking it a bunch today. Marijuana is becoming more available these days. There's medical use marijuana, and now there's just social use, or what, I forget what they call it, casual use, social use marijuana today too. So they can certainly get their hands on plenty of marijuana, have managed to get their hands on plenty of marijuana, smoked a bunch of it, still did not get well. Marijuana is not going to fix PTSD. Either is alcohol, either is any of the medications coming from the VA. That has been proven time and time again. So many times that has been proven. I can understand why the veteran goes to those remedies trying to get well, because they have this great big problem and they're trying to get rid of it. And so they're doing anything that they can to get rid of it, marijuana, alcohol, medications, but that is not working. It does give them a little bit of relief that day, I suppose, does help them get to sleep that night, I suppose, but the next day the problem is right there all over again, and they're going to have to go through the same routine again. All they can do at best is escape the trauma that is in their head, but they can never get rid of it completely. I suppose they wish that there was some sort of magic pill that they could take that would eliminate the PTSD out of their heads, but that's impossible. How can anything remove that experience from your head, from your mind, from your memories, and then still tie together everything else that was going on at the same time? How can you take out the memories of that battlefield scene, or the whole campaign that you may have been on in Vietnam or in Iraq or in Afghanistan? How can you pull that out of your head and fill that gap with what? Some sort of happy thoughts? What pill could possibly do that? What bottle of alcohol could possibly do that? Nothing can do that. So the thing that we have to do to get well from PTSD is we have to have another way to resolve the issue of what this PTSD is all about. And I like to say, I've had many clients come in, many veterans come into the office here, and we've worked on exactly that. They want to get well. They know these other things don't work. They tried it a bunch, it doesn't work. They're still trying them today because they got to do something to get this thing out of their head so that they can get some sleep, so that they can go to work, that sort of thing, so I get it, I understand that. But they do want a permanent fix. What is the permanent fix? That's what we want to focus on here. I believe PTSD can certainly be fixed and permanently, but we're going to have to learn something new. Again, as I always say, alcohol, pills, and marijuana will never fix PTSD because you have to learn something new, and those things don't teach anything, so there is no way that they can possibly ever cure you or fix you. So what do we have to learn? What do we have to learn? We're going to have to learn what the heck this life is all about. The reason we have PTSD is because we were exposed to some sort of horrific scene, event, out on the battlefield or otherwise, where we saw nothing but death, dying, killing, and suffering going on. We've seen blown up, burned up, tore up bodies laying on the ground, soldiers, enemy soldiers, our own soldiers, civilians, men, women, children, animals, you name it, whatever. When it comes to a war, it can get pretty nasty out there. Any of you veterans that have been to war know it can get pretty nasty out there in the battlefield. And so those thoughts and those images come into our mind, and we're wondering, wow, this is incredible, this is horrible, this is horrible to see, to witness all these burned up, tore up, dead bodies. And how did those people die, and how painful was it, and how horrible was it? And what happened to those people? They were alive, now they're dead. I could have been dead, I could have been killed, I could have stepped on a landmine, an IED, got hit by a mortar, got hit by a grenade, got hit by a 50 cal, whatever. I could have been just as dead, just as badly as any of these guys. I didn't, I'm glad about that. But what about my buddies, and what about all these other people? What happens to them now when they're dead? What happens to people when they die? Where do they go? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Is there a God? What happens to people when they die? What's going to happen to me when I die? Okay, I may have managed to live through this battlefield scene, this battlefield conflict, but again, I'm still going to die someday. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I know I'm going to. And what's going to happen then? Will I go to heaven? Will I go to hell? Am I just dead, buried in the ground like a worm? You know, is my life, what's the purpose of my life? What's the meaning of my life? All those questions fill our head, and that is what PTSD is all about. All those questions that fill our head, and we don't have any answers for any of them. We may read a little bit, we may go to counseling, we may go to church, we may ask our family, we may ask our mother, our father, our uncle, friends that we know, the VA, all sorts of doctors. We're not getting no answers here, folks. And so because we don't have no answers, that's why PTSD stays in our head. We have all these questions about life and death, and we have no answers. And if we ever got the answers, then we would get well, but we never get the answers, and so therefore PTSD stays with us. All PTSD is a bunch of unanswered questions, unsolved problems regarding life and death that we got exposed to, and we don't have the answers to it. If we got the answers, PTSD would end very quickly indeed. And I say we can get those answers. All the things that we have tried has not got rid of our PTSD. What is PTSD? It is anxiety. What is anxiety? Unanswered questions, unsolved problems. I say anxiety is a symptom of lack of knowledge. What is the cure for anxiety? Knowledge. A lack of knowledge, presented with a problem and not knowing how to solve the problem, therefore it gives us anxiety. Therefore, anxiety is a symptom of lack of knowledge. So how do we get rid of the anxiety? We answer all the questions. We have to answer the basic questions of this life. I mean, we may have went through childhood and teenage years and high school and stuff and had all sorts of happy, fun times. You know, lots of laughs and giggles, lots of good times with our pals, with our friends, with our buddies. That's great, that's fine. Most people have gone through that. Most military veterans have gone through exactly that. But then they grow up and they finally graduate from high school and they go out there into the world, and many of them decide to join the military. And when they join the military in this country, you're very likely going to get sent to war. This country fights a lot of battles, a lot of wars. So before long, if you're in the military for any length of time at all, there's a very good chance you're going out to the battlefield. And when you do, then you get exposed to all of these horrific scenes of death, dying, and killing that you were not exposed to in your youth. Everything in your youth was happy, happy, but now out there in the battlefield, you're finding out this is some heavy-duty traumatic stuff, and it is quite a wake-up call, quite a shock, quite a wake-up call, and we're wondering, what the heck is this stuff all about? This is crazy, this is incredible, I never saw anything like this before. And so our head is filled with all these questions, and we have no answers for them. And no matter who we ask, we don't seem to get any answers from them either, and so the questions stay in our head, and that's why the PTSD lasts as long as it does. As I said just a bit ago, if we ever got the answers for those questions, we would get over PTSD. So what are the questions really out there? The questions of, basically, as I say, we're left with the questions of, why am I here? What am I here for? What am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? What happens when I die? I say that if we had good, solid answers for those questions, we would probably get over our PTSD. In fact, I say we would get over it. It's not a probability. I say we would get over it. We got exposed to these horrific events as a wake-up call. If we knew the answers to those questions already, we would not have gotten PTSD. But we didn't know the answers, and so when we were exposed to the event, we got PTSD. But if we find out now the answers to those questions that PTSD brought on, we will get over PTSD. It is that simple. So, why are we here? What are we here for? What are we supposed to do? What is our purpose? I ask veterans and civilians all the time those questions, and nobody has answers. The only answers I ever get from them is that we're just supposed to be happy and live as good a life as we can and be good to our families and continue the human race, have children, have offspring, and continue on life that way. And I say, okay, that's a pretty good answer, but I say, so you have children and you make life good for them, and their children make life good for their children, and their children make life good for their children. That's fine, but where's this thing going? Is that all it is? Is everyone is just born and they grow up and they have children and make life good for their children and their children and their children? Where's this thing going? Is there any end to this thing at all? And I think most people feel that there is no end to this, that this just goes on forever and ever and ever. And it's been going on a long time, but it seems to me that there's got to be more of a reason for our life than just having children and trying to make life good for those children who make life good for those children. There's got to be more to this life than just that. And that is a confusing part of it, because we never thought of these questions and answers before until we got exposed to the death, dying, and killing, suffering that we saw out there in the battlefield. Now these questions come to mind, and we need to have answers to it. And all PTSD is all of those questions not being answered. So why are we here? What are we here for? What are we supposed to do? What is our purpose? And I start off many times trying to ask the person, the veteran, who made people? And I think it's a pretty simple question, but it's a good question. Who made people? What is your answer to that? When I asked a veteran, the civilian, that question, they stumble and fumble around a little bit, and they say mom and dad, or Adam and Eve, or something of that sort, which, okay, fine. But it's also saying they really don't know the answer to the question. Who made people? Not just who made you, but who made all people, all humans, who made people? And my answer to that is God made people. God made people. God made everything, and God made people. And I say, my next question is, why did God make people? Why did God make, if God made people, okay, fine, why did he make people? What was his reason? What was his purpose? And people give me all sorts of answers on that too. And some of those answers are kind of far-fetched and strange, but that's fine and dandy. I ask him, what was his reason, what was his purpose, God making people, because whatever his purpose was, that is our purpose. If God made us for a purpose, that is our purpose. What is that purpose? And I have very few people who can answer that question correctly. I answer that question by saying, well, what was the one thing that God wanted that he didn't have? and I wait for them to answer, but I get very few answers in that regard at all. Very few people have really thought of that question, and they certainly don't have an answer. I say, what was the one thing that God wanted that he didn't have? And I say the one thing that God wanted that he didn't have was someone to love that would accept his love and love him back. But there was no one there. And so he made people, hoping those people would accept his love and love him back. And those that do will get married to God and move into his house, heaven, and live forever. And those that don't. And that is basically, in my estimation, what this life, therefore, is all about. God is love, and he was looking for someone to love that would accept his love and love him back. And so he made people to fulfill that hope and that desire that he had. And he is hoping that those people will accept his love, and those that do accept his love, he will get married to at the end of their life, and they will get married to God and move into his house, heaven, and live forever. Heaven is God's house. Okay? And those that don't. So everyone has a free opportunity to accept that there is a God, he is real, he does accept that he does exist, and to believe that and accept that and come to the realization that God loves us all and wants us all to be in heaven. We are all his children, and he wants us all in heaven with him. But he has to find out first, he has to test and prove whether our love is faithful and loyal, and that's what this earth is all about. He gave people free will, a choice to either love him or to not love him. Those that love him will get married to him and move into his house, heaven, and live forever. And those that don't love him will not get that opportunity. There is an opportunity that they get. They will, therefore, have to go somewhere, and that somewhere is hell. I know a lot of people may not want to believe that, but it is in the Bible, and I do believe what the Bible says. So anyway, so that is what this, I say that the more we think on this, the more we come to the realization that there is a God, he is real, he does exist, he loves us all, wants us in heaven, but he gave us this place, this earth, as that place, as our proving testing ground to find out if indeed we will come to the realization that he does exist, he does love us, and he wants us in heaven. We all start off this earth, we don't know anything about anything. We start off as little babies, and we don't know anything about anything. But as we grow up and stumble and fumble, as I always say, through life, we learn many things as we go along in life. And this is one of the things that we have to learn. I know when we're children and we're young, we don't really think on these things. We're just having fun and learning all sorts of stuff and having good times. But then there comes a period of time in our life when all of a sudden we're exposed to some of this deep, deep stuff. God don't mind us having fun, laughs, and giggles, but he does want us to learn some things too. And this is the big things that he wants us to learn, that there is a God, he is real, he does exist, he loves us, and he wants us in heaven. Did we learn that? We need to learn that sort of thing. And when we are exposed to death, dying, and killing, and how tough and difficult this earth is, we come to the realization that, man, there's a lot of things that we don't know. That is our wake-up call. That is what God wants us to see and understand so that we can start learning these things. He wants us to know these things so that we can answer that call. He wants us to accept his love and to show our thanks and appreciation for everything that he has done for us. He wants us to be able to see that and show our thanks and appreciation and do everything we can to love God back. And those that do get married to God again and move into his house, heaven, and live forever. So what is one thing that God wanted that he didn't have? Someone to love that accept his love and love him back. He built that same dynamic in all of us. So we have male and female here on earth. And what does every male want? What does every female want that they don't have? Someone to love that will accept their love and love them back. And when they find each other, they get married to each other and move into their house and live happily ever after too. So God built that same dynamic between male and female here on earth so that we could understand the same relationship that exists between him and us. It is not something that is strange and abstract that we can never figure out or never realize. It is something that we live with every day. Every guy, every gal out there is looking for someone to love that will accept their love and love them back. And when they find each other, they are filled with joy. They get married and move in their house and live happily ever after. And what is the one thing that they do? Very likely, they make people. God made people. And he made people make people. We have babies. And we want those, and when we have those babies, we love the dickens out of them, and we want them to love us back. How do they love us back? By obeying us. By learning from us and obeying us and doing the good things that we want them to do. And as I said before, one or two of the children may behave us just fine, and we're just as happy as can be. They obey us, they do a real good job, we're just thrilled, we're very happy with that. One or two of them may not do such a good job. They might be quite disobedient, defiant, causing all sorts of trouble and stuff. We're not too happy about that. So we're constantly on them, trying to get them to go the good and right way. When they finally do go the good and right way, they're brushing their teeth, they're cleaning their rooms, they're doing their homework, they're doing good in school. When they finally do that, we're as happy as can be, we're pleased, and we're as happy as can be. Are we going to continue punishing them, whatever, for the way that they used to be? No, we are not. We're going to be thrilled and joyful because they finally got it right. They finally got it right. We don't care how much they got wrong before. We only care really that they finally got it right. Now we can love them as fully as the other kids that did good right from the beginning. Well, that same relationship God has built into us also is the same relationship that He has with us. Here we are here on this earth, and some of us follow God fine right from the beginning, and God is as thrilled as can be. But some of us are quite disobedient, resistant, stubborn, and do not want to go along with God on anything. And so our life is pretty difficult therefore. We run into all sorts of troubles and stuff, and we're wondering what's going on. Well, when we finally get it right with God, then He is very pleased with us too, and our life starts going better too. This is the same relationship between God and us as He built between parents and children. And He made it that way so that we could see and understand how this relationship with God works. We can come to the realization that God is like us in many ways. And that makes sense. He has to be like us in many ways so that we could learn about Him. What does God want from us? God wants us to be in a great relationship with Him. He wants to have a good communion with us. He wants to have a good relationship with us. He wants us to believe that He is there, that He is listening to us, that He cares for us, that He can make our life good for us. He can give us all sorts of breaks and opportunities, blessings. And He wants us to see that He is a real person out there so that we can strive to be with Him someday when our life ends here on earth. We're not going to be here forever, folks. We're only going to be here a short time. We don't know how long, 60, 70, 80 years, something like that. God is hoping, and He gave us that much time, hoping that somewhere along the line we'll finally get it right. We'll finally see that He is real, that He does exist, and there is a heaven out there, and that we will strive to go out there, because we are not going to stay here forever, folks. I don't want to stay here forever. I don't think you want to stay here forever. 60, 70, 80 years, you know what? That's enough time. It's time to move along. We want to graduate. We graduated from grade school, we graduated from high school, maybe we graduated from college. Don't we want to graduate from this earth and see what's on the other side? We want to graduate from grade school to see what it's like to be in high school, and then when we had a bunch of high school, we wanted to graduate from high school and go into college because we wanted to see what that was like, and so we spent several years in college, and that was good. We were happy with that, but then it came time that we wanted to graduate from that and get out there into the real world. Okay, well, a bunch of us have been out there in the real world now quite a few years, and we're getting to the place like, I want to see what's on the other side. I've seen enough of this, been here, done this long enough, it's time to move on. And so we want to graduate from this earth, and we want to graduate into heaven, where life is going to be totally fabulous and it'll last forever. The big question is, did we get it right? Did we make the cut? Did we make the cut, or did we get cut? And we got to come to that realization, because we are only here for a short time. So when we're out there in the battlefield, and we see all that death, dying, and killing that's going on out there, it brings these thoughts to mind. What is this life all about? How come we die? What happens when we die? And we got to get those answers. And when we get those answers and we see how logical, rational this all is, how it all adds up, makes a lot of sense, then we have no choice but to start believing it. It sounds sensible to us. It sounds logical to us. It makes a lot of sense. All the dots connect. And so therefore, we're getting answers to those questions. And the more answers we get to those questions, the more our anxiety comes down. The less anxiety we have, the more peace we have. Therefore proven that is the right answer. Alcohol cannot do that for us. Marijuana can't. Medications can't. Much of the counseling out there cannot give us that sense of peace. They do not answer those questions, and so we still do not have peace. We don't want to just cope with PTSD. We don't want to just learn some sort of breathing exercises and think some sort of safe place and nice serene settings of some sort like that. We don't want to have to drink a quart of vodka a day or a 20 pack of Budweisers every day. We don't want to have to do that, folks. We want true and real answers. And these are the questions that came to mind to the PTSD event that we had, and these are the questions that we have to answer. And when we answer those questions about why we're here, what we're here for, what we're supposed to do, what our purpose is, and we see that those answers add up, make sense, logical, rational, all the dots connect on it, then we have a sense of peace, and then our PTSD is over with, because the PTSD is nothing but all of those questions with no answers. And when we have the answers, then we have peace. So what do we need to do? We need to consider these points, these answers to these questions, and we need to think on them over and over again. We need to practice them. They are our therapy. I know our mind is going to constantly go back to the battlefield scenes or whatever the horrific event was that we went through, but we got to go back and pull our brain back onto thinking on these things over and over until it finally sinks in and soaks in, and that becomes our new thinking. The more we think on these things here, the smaller the PTSD will get. So the more we think on these things here, the smaller the PTSD will get. We got to consider that, because when we see how deep this is, what this life is all about, why there is a God, why He created this planet, why He created people, and it makes a lot of sense. That becomes a thing that overtakes our thinking, and we will stop thinking about the PTSD. We will understand why the PTSD was there, why there is so much death, dying, and killing on this earth, why it will never end on this earth, and the fact that we can start looking forward to the day when we finally do leave this earth and go into heaven and be with God, and then we will be with God forever and ever, and there will be no more death, dying, and killing in heaven once we get there. And that is what we need to look at, and that's what we need to focus on. And that's what we're going to continue to talk on over and over again until it is finally said totally and fully, many different ways, many different times, until all of the veterans out there that are listening in, and I hope more of them will listen in, please tune in to this channel, this YouTube channel, Open Sessions with Dr. Monroe, and tell your friends about that and tell your other veterans about that, so that we can continue this move and so that we can continue to spread this word and help more and more veterans with their PTSDs, not only for their sakes, but for the sakes of the family too. Because your family, veterans, your families need you to overcome PTSD. They need you to be the father and husband your family needs you to be. You need to be a fun guy, a happy guy that has learned many things, that can tell your family these things too, because they also need to know. They are looking up to you to have these answers about what this life is all about, why we're here, what we're here for. They need those answers too. And they need those answers to make sound logic and sense to them too, so that they can see, understand, so that they can fulfill their purpose in life too. So stay tuned. We will be back another time. Thank you all for joining us today.